Hello and welcome to the Two Very Tired Guys podcast. My name is Rex, and here I have what should I call you? I forgot to ask before the start.
Oh, no worries. Chris Black is fine. You can just call me Chris.
All right, so we got Chris here with a Gun Spectre. So Chris, why don't you tell me how did you get into game development?
It was an accident. When I was younger, I always told myself, "Don't do that. It's a lot of work. It's a pain in the nuts." And then over time, I just started learning different things, like artwork, animation, uh, music, sound effects, audio, all that stuff. And then with a little bit of knowledge of the software that I use to actually make the game, it all kind of just came together. And so now I've been kind of dabbling with this for years now.
And what was your biggest inspiration for making Gun Spectre?
Well, I would say the three main games that inspired this mess. I'd say that, yeah, it would be the first Zelda for the NES, Saberwolf, which the way I describe it is kind of like Zelda before Zelda, and Smash TV, which is a twin stick shooter that was on a few platforms and in the arcade one time.
So why don't you tell me about some of those influences? Because I definitely the overworld. I was reminded of Zelda One. I got that vibe right away, but I haven't heard of the other two.
All right, so Saberwolf it's a maze game where you move from screen to screen, kind of like how you would in Zelda, but it's very basic, and I'm a fan of simplicity. So it is similar to Zelda in many ways, but without all the extra fluff that it has. I mean, I guess as much fluff as a game from 1986 or 1987 can have. And then Smash TV is just action. I think that game was loosely based on the movie The Running Man. I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so one is just a maze adventure game. The other one is straight up just a twin stick shooter, pew pew, run around, shoot stuff. So I kind of like picked the things that I liked without making it too complicated and kind of jumbled it all together into this.
And what was your initial concept behind making Gun Spectre?
All right, so Gunspector didn't even start off as almost anything resembling the game that it became. I was originally designing a really simple. It was still a twin stick shooter, but instead of having a world that you could explore and do things in, it was more like a strategy game where you would have a map and you would tell your little guy to go to like different places, and then you would get this like once you get there, you get this top-down view where you shoot stuff and you clear it out, and then you move on to the next place. I'm not doing a good job at explaining this.
I think you're doing fine.
Yeah, but also it was so long ago, so I'm kind of just pulling this out of memory. Um, but yeah, it started off as a strategy action game about a robot in space, and then I decided, well, I feel like I could do more, and that's when it started turning into this like Zelda-esque kind of thing that it is now. And I'll tell you, it took a while.
And why did you make such a old school coded game in today's age, considering how hard it is as a challenge to stand out many of the other old school pixel art games?
So, I mean, these are the games like this. It's what I grew up with. This is all the crap. Based on a lot of the crap that I played when I was a kid, and I still play said crap now. Um, and I basically made it as a game that I would enjoy.
And
Sales be damned.
do you think it's that was an important thing when developing Gun Spectre was to make the game that you wanted to make?
I would say so. Like with the smaller things that I've done in the past, when I would go back and play them again, I'd be like, "Oh God!" Like I don't like this too much, and I hate to say that about anything that I've done, but like when I go back and play this, I just think like, if this had been released like 30 years ago, this would be pretty cool. And seeing as I enjoy things from 30 years ago, it's a slam dunk.
How did you end up designing the various enemies? Because there are a large variation throughout both your dungeons and your map.
Well, I'll be honest with you, kind of just pulled them out of my ass. There's no way of sugarcoating that. So I did have some help with the artwork. Oleg Klaus, fellow game designer, contributed greatly to that. The Some of the enemies that show up are actually leftovers from when it was still that kind of like space robot strategy thing I was telling you about. Uh, we didn't really think about what they were. We kind of just put them in because they looked kind of interesting. Some of them are, I mean, I guess they're as complex as they can get given the size of the artwork. Um, Others not so much, but it's kind of like, like the battle between form and function. But I mean, really, it was just a whole bunch of winging it with the artwork, and then eventually we had to kind of like look at it all and find a way to make it all like visually coherent.
Were there any enemies that didn't make the cut, perhaps because they were too similar to other enemies, or just weren't fun to play around?
Oh yeah, I'm actually looking at some of them right now. So there was a boss battle that got cut. How much of it have you played?
I'd say most of it. I think I got through at least 3 dungeons, and then I think there was another 3 that I needed to do.
Did you get to the boss that kind of like rushes down the screen, goes back up, and then the walls close in?
Yes, that was the first boss. I actually really liked that one.
All right, so that boss was one of the last ones that I put together. Um, it was kind of like made from a less interesting boss that was kind of similar, but it didn't do like the wall crushing thing, and it didn't even look nearly as awesome. Um, so yeah, there's this like one boss that's still in there that I just didn't use. I could throw it in any time, but I don't think it would be worth it. A few basic enemies like a tiny little thing that'll like pop out of the ground, and you got to shoot it. But it was that particular one was very difficult to kill just because of its size. But if I felt like if I had made it bigger, then it would be annoying to avoid, if that makes any sense. And then there's some odds and ends, like a couple of traps that didn't get used, like cracks in the ground that break, you fall down a hole. Um, Kind of like a timed thing that you have to go through. Where how do I explain this? So you have like, we'll call them orbs. Why not? 2 orbs with one tile in between, and then you'd get like an electrical shock, and they would kind of alternate. And I didn't think those were particularly interesting either. So yeah, there's some cut content in there, but not a lot. I don't know if we can make a cutting room floor page about it. But I mean that's what happens when you're making a game, especially when your development time is dragged out for however long. Is that you put things in, you try them, you kind of like them, you kind of don't, you take them out, you adjust them, you turn them into other stuff. I think that's just the way of the game.
Was there anything that you really wanted in the game, but you just couldn't figure out how to get it to fit in?
So I did kind of want some like mini games in there, and like I prototyped one, and it just didn't feel right. Just kind of like filler. Like to me it kind of ruined the flow, especially if they were put in a way that's kind of mandatory for the player. Uh, we did want more story. That's something I've heard about. Where's the story? And it's like I couldn't write my way out of a wet paper bag. Um, and even then, like trying to add in things like small cutscenes and stuff like that, I felt really interrupted the flow and kind of took away from that like bare bones retro kind of thing that I was going for. Thinking what else did I want in there that didn't make it? If I think of it, I'll let you know.
And how did you end up designing the overall map? And how did you keep exploration and encounters fresh so that the whole area doesn't just kind of blend into an unmemorable blur?
All right, so the map, that's a story right there. I'll try to keep it simple though. So I made an editor to put the map together. I don't know if you've ever used Click Team Fusion before, but they have this thing called a frame editor where you can kind of just like plop things down. But I wanted something that I could change whenever I felt like it. Think of like a world editor for a different game. I basically used this editor to make another editor so I could edit my map and put that all together. So once I got all that set up, I did make a smaller version of the map and finished it. I think that was like around like fall last year, and like I could beat it in 20 minutes. So I went back to the drawing board, made another one. The process behind that was that I just opened up Photoshop and started drawing a map. Basically getting all the pathways figured out, which environmental assets to use, cobbled that together, went back and then decided where the enemies would go. I truly did just wing it with the world map, but I also tested it into Oblivion. So I mean, I guess it wasn't like entirely wung. I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
How did you keep the exploration fresh and the whole area memorable?
Well, I mean, in terms of keeping areas memorable, we worked with a limited number of tiles, and to kind of work around that, so we weren't killing ourselves making like hundreds of different tiles. Just do a color change. So it's like that like the red area is the only red area, and you're gonna remember where that is. Same with the gray zone where that I think that's where the wall crushing boss is. So a little bit of coloring, keeping it all fresh though. The game, I don't know if you noticed, it is kind of non-linear. Now, like in my opinion, when you have a game with linear progression, you can kind of like build things up as you go. But when you just get dropped in, you get told like go anywhere, do anything, doesn't matter. Um, you know, I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say here, but now I'm not going to say that from place to place the experience isn't fresh, but I did try to keep things kind of balanced, not too easy, not too difficult the whole way through. But when you get to the end, though, if you get to the end, you're in for one hell of a time.
Was it hard to design balance, considering that the whole game is non-linear?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would say some of the areas that were most memorable to me are probably in the overworld map, whereas you have quite a few traps. I think at one point you have boulders crashing down, or you have a statue come to life. What were some of the most fun moments that you were kind of hoping were going to be gotchas for the players?
So, like, for me, like when I played through it, like a million times, when I played through it, like the best parts for me were the boss fights. Um, like to me that the action is what is most interesting. Um, for the players, like for just like any random player, um, I would hope that the bosses are the thing for them. But yeah, like there are these like different traps. Like there are rooms that just say, like fuck you, like you're stuck here, kill the enemies. Um, then of course, boulders that come down, a couple of enemies that come to life. I mean, I guess there are a couple of surprises to it, but not too many. But I think things that stand out to people playing it, that's gonna be something for them. And I could honestly couldn't tell them what that should be. It's very subjective.
How did you design fun boss encounters?
God, I'd have to think about that. Most of those bosses uh, I put together like probably 2 years ago, and I moved on very quickly to other things. But looking back on it, having played it, um, I kind of treated the boss fights as like a test of endurance. Like you probably noticed that they don't do a lot of different things. Uh, like they're like two trick ponies, maybe three trick ponies, and you just kind of have to figure out what their pattern is going to be. And they do some things randomly, but not to the point where it's going to hurt the player too much. Um, I just tried going for something that was visually engaging and also something that would deliver challenge. Now, if that's fun, that's great. But I mean, like I said though, it's been so long since I actually put most of these bosses together that I couldn't tell you where my head was at that time.
What to you makes a fun boss fight?
Challenge and satisfaction. So the challenge of actually fighting the boss, and then the satisfaction of actually killing it. Um, and then secondary to all of that is packing and presentation, because like you may not think it's as fun if it's just like say a couple of squares moving around on the screen versus these robots that these things are.
And what boss do you think you did the best presentation wise and the worst presentation wise?
So the best I would say is the final boss. That is, I think that is the last one that I did, and I actually did that earlier this year. So I could tell you all about that one, but spoilers, I won't. But you'll see it for yourself. Visually speaking, there's a lot going on there, and in terms of what it does, it it's a little bit of everything. So that one's definitely a fun time in my opinion. As for the other bosses, which one do I like the least? Uh, Obviously the one that I cut, but there's one boss, I don't know if you encountered it, where you're in a room and there is a hole in the middle of the room, a couple of blocks, and the boss moves around the room, like around the edges, and then sometimes turns around. And the only way you can hit it is if you hit it from behind. Um, Now, visually, I think that boss looks fine. All the bosses kind of share the same design, but in watching other people fight it, and even the times that I fought it myself, like sometimes I would just kick its ass, and other times I'd be like, "What the hell was this?" But I did watch others struggle with it, and I don't really feel too good about it, but it is what it is. I might fix it later on, but I would say it's that one, whatever you want to call it. They don't have names.
That is the boss that I got stuck at.
See,
That's the one that got me a little messed up.
yeah, like that one has been a pain point for almost everyone that I have seen. playing this game, and like that one kind of messed with me too. There was another one that kind of throws me off, and what does it do? It kind of moves around the screen, and then it has like two spiked balls that orbit around it, and then it pops up into the air and comes down on you and crushes you. I struggle fighting that one, but I don't know. I guess we'll say that it's a toss up between that one and the one that you can only hit from behind.
How come you wanted players to run through the dungeon each time to fight the boss instead of, let's say, setting a checkpoint at the boss room?
So, shame on me. At one point, there were checkpoints in there, but I kind of leaned into that, like, oh man, I really want this to just be like as old and outdated as possible mentality about it. I think to an extent that is a mistake. Especially now that I've had more time to kind of like let everything like settle in and get some more feedback. But everyone has a different definition of what a challenge is for them, and for me, because I was basically my own guinea pig for most of development, for me having a checkpoint closer to the boss was too easy. So I figured, well, maybe I should suffer if I mess this up. I should suffer to get back there. Now, related to that is when you get one of those data crystals, and if you die, you go back to that room. You don't go back to the entrance. Now, the reason why I did that, as bad as it's going to sound probably, is because of achievements, because you get an achievement for exploring every room in an underground area. And based on my own playing, I found it to be more painful to get sent back all the way to the beginning of the area and then have to like explore it. I figured it would be better to backtrack, but like a lot of these like smaller like these problems, or if you want to call them problems, or you can call them quirks. These are all things that can be fixed. These are all things that can be changed and adjusted. So with where you get checkpointed, or how difficult or easy it is to get back to a certain place from another place, it's on the table.
How do you decide between, when you're making an old school game, when something was fun because it still holds up today versus something that was fun because of nostalgia purposes? Or where is the line between something that, or what makes a mechanic outdated compared to modern sensibilities?
All right, so with earlier home video games, back then, what they had to work with was what they learned in arcade games. So take a game like look at Ninja Gaiden for the NES. I think that game is an okay example of this. There's a lot of cheap stuff going on, like the flying enemies that knock you over. You're always falling into a hole. Or look at Contra. Contra is actually a better example. Contra is difficult. They took the arcade mentality, brought it home when the home game didn't need the player to keep lobbing quarters into the thing. So I think that's kind of where part of the line gets drawn, is like, is it cheap or is it challenging? And cheap as a design philosophy, I can understand why they did it back then, but today, unless there's like that player's like really into that thing, it just doesn't work. What was the other end of that question?
I have no idea.
Oh. Damn.
Some of these questions are written down, some of them are not, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
a crapshoot about whether I can remember what I just said half the time.
Let me see if I can kind of guide you back here because I know I've been kind of rambling a little bit. Yeah, like when like basically when is it nostalgia and
How do you know when a mechanic still holds up versus something that's just fun to you because of
yeah.
nostalgia?
Okay, yeah. Oh, hey, see, you remembered. Yeah, so I guess part of it's the intent. This is the less rambling version, I suppose. Part of it is the intent of the mechanic, and part of it's the execution. Um, and to kind of figure out like what's good and like what's not so good, you kind of have to put your own perception of what those things are on the back burner and try to see it through the eyes of the modern player. And I did a little bit of that. I'll be honest, a little bit.
Because I still really enjoy playing RuneScape,
Mm-hmm.
but that is so, like that game in particular for me at least is so blurry in terms of like how much am I enjoying because I do enjoy the design decisions they make, and how much is it that it's just like nostalgia goggles blinding me. You know, it's hard to get an objective view on what's fun purely because of like childhood glee versus what is objective game design, if there's such a thing.
Yeah, like honestly, I've only ever played RuneScape like once or twice. Um, but thinking, what game would be a good example of that? Because like pretty much like any game on the NES is really rough. Um,
Well, a lot of games still have like a life mechanic, even though it doesn't do anything. Um, they'll have like a lot of platformers will have like you have like 5 lives, but losing your life doesn't do anything except you lose the checkpoint in one stage, and sometimes you'll never run out of lives. So it's just like a non like a it doesn't really serve a purpose except for like maybe a high score counter, which a lot of modern games don't have. So it's like just an old staple. It's almost like the gallbladder of platformers in a way.
like even then, like for like games like back in the 80s, I don't understand why some platformers had a score counter. Like you didn't get lives from them, you didn't get continues, but there it was just running. But I guess using one of my inspirations as an example, like the first Zelda is a really rough game by today's standards, and has a lot of problems. And I know that I'm enjoying it because that's nostalgia. But there are things about it that still hold up. But I mean, I guess looking at it objectively, it's how do you not piss off your audience? And then the rest of it is all subjective. I mean, maybe it is all subjective. I honestly couldn't say. Like I said, I just wing it.
Considering how much you've just winged it, was it nervous when you released the game?
So yes and no. Now, like when it came to making sure nothing was going to break and everything was bug free and nothing was going to screw up, I did not wing it. We went through weeks of making sure that everything would just work. And thankfully, when I wung it, I don't know. But when I was making the map, like I personally tested it to make sure that it was coherent and not too aggravating to play. And if something didn't seem right, I would go back and fix it. But I mean, have you ever done a commercial release before?
I mean, I've released games before. I don't know if I'd say commercial, but I have stuff on my itch.io page.
Oh, even then, like, weren't you nervous?
No, only because I knew no one would play it, if I'm being honest. I don't have any marketing or any followers that strong. Um, the only thing that I am nervous about really is like balancing because um, one of the things I released was like a tabletop RPG, and I'm still playing it, but obviously I can't test everything, and I have such a limited
Right.
pool of people who can test things, so I have no idea what is genuinely broken or not until I get feedback, and so I'm just kind of in limbo waiting for someone to come back and be like, that's broken as shit, and I still find things occasionally where I'm like,
Yeah.
that needs to be changed.
Yeah, and like that's gonna happen. Thankfully we live in a time where everything's online and we can just quickly fix these things and put it out there. But before I start interviewing you, let me get back to the question. So, I mean, yeah, of course, of course, I was nervous, and that had absolutely nothing to do with winging it. It's just like thinking like, oh God, what could go wrong, or is anyone gonna buy it? Are they gonna like it? Are they gonna hate it? What are they gonna say? That sort of thing. But I think being nervous about it is not a bad thing, because I mean, for one, it shows that you care. Not that I'm saying you don't care for not being nervous. I mean, you have your reasons, um, but don't forget though that someday somebody might actually stumble upon it. Um, but no, there's nothing wrong with being nervous about it, and that anxiety kind of wears off after a little bit.
How has the reception been so far since you've released your game?
It's a good question. Let's find out. So I know that a few people have streamed it, and they seemed okay with it. Couple of videos on it. Going over to Steam, not a lot of reviews. Let's see what we got. You know, three positive, one negative, three positive curator reviews, and then things that have been sent to me personally seem positive. A little bit of feedback, and I wouldn't necessarily call it negative feedback, just constructive criticism. Um, but I didn't expect that people would play it and just be like, "Oh my god, I love it," because it's a very specific type of game, and maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way, but you kind of have to like certain games to kind of like appreciate it for what it is. And by certain games, I mean you got to have a stomach for the old stuff.
What's that been like to throw something out into what is essentially the void, and for it to respond back with people live streaming your game? And I saw that you retweeted that someone had your game featured in a newsletter. What are those feelings like?
Um, Honestly, it's kind of surreal. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not getting mountains of attention on this, but I'm amazed that there's any attention at all. I didn't expect it. Like I said, surreal. It's interesting, and like I'm glad people are playing it and talking about it. It's surprising.
Were you worried at all about some people coming back and saying that your game might have been too short when you made it?
Yep. Absolutely. So when I was testing it, my personal best was like an hour and 45 minutes. And that's with me knowing where everything is, how everything works, um, and with my less than stellar reflexes. Um, I thought, well, damn, if I could beat it that quickly, it's only a matter of time before other people do it. Maybe some people will do that right off the bat. Um, but what I found out, especially watching other people play, is that some people took 2 hours, some people took, and this is based on the in-game timer. Um, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, and then one guy went back for a second helping and beat it in like 45 minutes. Um, it's I think something like that is kind of hard to control. You don't necessarily want to create barriers that drag out the length of the game. Some of my favorite games I can beat in like half an hour or less than 2 hours. But I mean, personally, I would have been like asking myself, what the fuck, if like everybody beat it in like less than an hour. But yeah, no, I was worried about it, but you know, players come in different varieties, different levels of skill, and yeah, I kind of just had to hope for the best.
I think when it comes to making art, you want to make what you think is the best for the piece that you're making. But the logistics are that if you make something under 2 hours, you can get a refund. Did that
Yes, but
influence your decision making at all during the development, or was that a fear you had in the back of your head?
I would say that influenced my decision making lightly. Um, because like those scenes that I mentioned, the cut scenes that I cut out. Um, I mean, yeah, like we thought we should have more visual variety, and I mean, like I'll be honest with you, I thought like, hey, that can tack on precious seconds onto the runtime. Um, but I don't think it's right to to have a lot of decisions revolve around that 2 hour window that Steam has, and I don't think that it should impact what the game is. It shouldn't take away from what the game is. Um, I mean, really, if someone plays it and they beat it in an hour and they paid for it and they want to support the developer, they want to support the publisher, they're not going to ask for a refund. If they do, that's life. But I worried about it a tiny bit, but I mean, just make a damn game and put it out there, and if they like it, they'll support you.
Because I've seen YouTube videos where devs do postmortems, and I
Yeah,
will always remember one that he got a lot of positive reviews, but he had a high refund rate. And what he found was that it was mostly due to the fact that it was too short. And as indie developers, obviously our dream is to make this a full-time job, and that requires paying bills. So you need
yeah,
to have your game not be refundable, or at least not be so easily refundable so you can pay your bills. But you also need to make art that's meaningful, and adding padding only to extend a time length doesn't really feel great. And so I never want to shame a dev when it comes to making that decision, but that is
yeah,
a feeling I think that looms over a lot of us when we publish.
yeah. I'd say it's true. Like I said, for me, like yeah, I did think about it, and it very lightly influenced the decisions that I made. But I mean, like I take risks. I don't want that to ruin what it is that I'm trying to put out there. And like I said, if someone truly wants to support a developer or a publisher, they're not going to ask for that refund. It's like if you go to a restaurant and you slam that burger down in like 10 minutes, well, you ate that burger, and if you like that burger, you're not going to go to the server or the cook and make a huge stink about it and ask for your money back.
I have seen people do that though. They will like complain and then like get their shit like comped after they eat the whole thing. Those people are
Mm-hmm.
assholes.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, personally, not me. If something's wrong, I'm going to catch it after the first bite.
I completely off topic. Yeah, if I order a medium rare cheeseburger and you give me that shit like well done, I will complain right away.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a big difference between medium rare and well done. One is delicious and beautiful, and the other one is a hockey puck.
I and I'm not I am picky, but like I feel bad when I'm picky. But like if someone serves me well done meat, I'm like I just can't, man. This shit's like
Yeah.
fucking. Uh, anyway, that's not game development related, but still an important thing to I want to proselytize to the world.
Yes.
How does it feel as a game dev when you have very easy achievements to beat and you just see like a large percentage of players do not complete those achievements?
Um, I guess it depends on the achievement because, like with Gun Spectre, some of the achievements are just tied directly to your progress. Um, and if I see that those achievements aren't being unlocked, then what that tells me is that they have not been playing through it, which is fine. People have lives, people have stuff to do, or maybe they just don't want to keep on playing, or maybe they have a huge backlog of other stuff. I don't know. Um, but then with the other ones where it's like, oh, like kill X amount of enemies, which I mean you're gonna do eventually, or go around and do this or that or the other thing. Like personally, not as a developer, but as a consumer, I don't give a rat's ass about achievements. They personally don't concern me. Maybe that spills into my development stuff, but that's more of a personal problem for the player than it is for me.
Because I was seeing when I got achievements, sometimes I like to see who has those achievements because it's just a thing across games in general. You'll see 50% of players have completed chapter 1, and it's just kind of like a head scratcher of like, huh? What?
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that, like generally speaking, is due to like some kind of like a bug or a glitch, an error, something like that.
I think it's the Steam backlog effect. I think
Yeah,
it's you got players because I have the entire Metro trilogy downloaded. I have not touched it,
yeah,
and I need to. So I will be one of those players where it's like I have 0% of the achievements. Um, I was just wondering as a dev, what's that like to look or to see when you like an achievement that you thought would be hard, and then it's got a decent amount of people who beat it.
yeah. Like I'm looking at the achievements for Gun Spectre right now. 83.3% of players have passed the tutorial. Um, just based on the achievements, I can't believe that someone didn't at least make it to the end of the tutorial unless they haven't played it. Half of them have killed 100 enemies. 42.8% found their first data crystal. 21.4 got their third one. 16% got all six. Oh, this is a fun one. Commando, eliminate all the sub bosses. So with that one, I see 16.6%. Like once you get through the first six areas, like you're not done killing bosses. And one of the extras isn't exactly on the main path. So I could see how that one would be missed, but also 16.6% actually beat the game. Um, it's interesting. It's interesting to look at, but I mean, it doesn't matter too much to me. As a developer, I just think it's interesting.
One of the other things I saw was that people were starting to speed run your game. What's that like as a feeling to watch people make speed runs and try to like best your game as fast as possible?
It really burns my ass that there are people out there who can play my game better than me, but that's life. Sorry.
That's really funny.
I'm happy for them. No, I'm actually truly I'm impressed. But it does burn my ass.
I do. I love those videos where they get the devs of games and they show them like professional speedrunners, and the devs are just dying internally. They're like, "Oh, you can do that? Okay."
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just look at it as they're doing the same things that I can do, just better. Truly impressive though. Like that guy who did it in like 44 or 45 minutes or something. Now that final time that shows up in the save files, that's actually the time of your last save. So there was probably like a good 10 minutes or so on top of it, but um, still really good. I don't think I could do it in that amount of time.
Is there any thought about porting this over to some handheld device?
Well, which one are you talking about?
Gun Spectre?
No, which handheld device?
Oh, any of them. You know, like you got the Steam Deck now,
Yeah.
which I know is a little tricky to get portability. There's the Switch. Um, I wish I could get this on the Game Boy. That's what I would really like.
Yeah, it would be awesome on a Game Boy for sure. But that would kind of be like starting over. I have no experience in making games for Game Boy, and it would no longer be a twin stick shooter. But just as like a weekend project or something, that'd be pretty cool. Steam Deck, I don't think that it will work on the Steam Deck. I'm not sure. I don't have access to that. But shouldn't it say so on the store page?
No idea. I don't really know what the process is to make it compatible.
Like in theory, I would imagine it can work on a Steam Deck. I don't have one to test on, so um, I am experimenting with an Android version. Been working on that since like right before the Steam launch. Um, I don't know when it's going to be done, but it will be done. As far as other platforms go, looking into it.
How did you come up with really the aesthetic of Gun Spectre? How did you design the main character and why set it in a desert?
All right, so the let me preface this by saying that like the game's resolution is 160 by 80 pixels, so it's like a postage stamp. The character looks the way he looks because he's easy to see on the screen, which sounds like a really really lame explanation, but I mean it's the truth. You give this tiny little piece of pixel art a nice big hat, he's gonna stand out. The desert environment kind of followed that. Figure, hey, you got something that looks like a cowboy, put it in the desert. But I didn't want to make a western, so I kind of just went into this whole like post-apocalyptic thing with it. And nothing screams wasteland like a big empty desert. But like something that I kind of thought about while I was putting it together. And I guess there are very few similarities between the two, but the anime Desert Punk crossed my mind a few times. So maybe there's a little bit of that in there. But like some of it was like technical choices. Some of it was just like, is it gonna look good? And then some of it has to do with like what kind of world was I like trying to share.
Oh, there's always space westerns, which I've always thought was interesting. Where it's
Yeah.
you get Cowboy Bebop and Borderlands and all those. Now Starfield, they were showing shots. And they were all wearing cowboy hats. I was like, what's happening?
Starfield, is that out yet? Is that finally happening?
No, they've been releasing more and more footage of it. It's not out yet though.
God, it feels like it's been years.
Which it really does. I feel like it's the perfect segue into the part of the podcast which is talk about what games we're excited for and playing.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Starfield. The only thing is that apparently it has to have an SSD.
Oh, what the device?
Yeah, whatever you're running it on has to have an SSD, which like I upgraded
Really?
my computer all the way. I got everything done except I was like, I'll just leave the hard disk drive because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I guess it does. So now I gotta go buy another fucking part for my computer just to run this stupid game. Uh,
Well, yeah, SSDs are cheap, and you won't regret having one.
I have one. I have a really small like 256 gig SSD just to
That is
boot.
small.
Yeah, it's literally just the boot SSD, and then I have a hard disk drive, 3 terabytes for the rest of my games because I figured that's just what I need. I don't really care if the game boots up 7 seconds faster or not. But honestly, I think No Man's Sky is really the big one that's pushing me to getting an SSD, just because that game takes like 2 minutes to boot up. Runs fine once it's
Yeah.
up, but like, oh my god, the boot time on that thing.
Like I've noticed, not that I'm playing anything modern on my computer, but like just general use, I've noticed a difference.
Yeah, I'm a penny pincher. I got I think I'd rather buy games than try to get them to look as nice as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I got an SSD just because I needed an extra hard drive, and I figure like why buy like an old disk that that's gonna fizzle out in like 5 or 6 years with the way I use these things.
The only thing that's great about like a hard disk drive is the fact that like as they start to go bad, while an
Mhm.
SSD just it's gone. There's no it's dead.
Yeah, always back your shit up.
I had a flash drive with the only copy of my prototype before one of my games, and my ex at the time accidentally washed my jacket with the flash drive in it.
Oh no.
It worked fine. I still use that flash drive, but like I came out the dryer and like I pulled out the flash drive and it was burning hot from running in the dryer. Fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I would be more worried about the dryer than the washer.
I got so lucky. Same thing happened with my Game Boy Advance. Actually, I went through the washer and the dryer. Still works.
Hey, not bad. As long as you're not trying to fire it up while it's wet, then you're good.
There's the risk of corrosion slightly, but yeah,
Yeah,
no. If you can get away as long as you don't turn it on a lot of the times.
yeah. Like a very long time ago, I was canoeing, and like a fool, I was sitting all the way on one. I was on the canoe by myself, sitting all the way on one side instead of being in the middle. And I had my cell phone on me. It was a Nokia. It was like one of those like indestructible Nokias. I think it was like a 3595. I pulled this turn and flipped the canoe and took my phone with it, and like the phone survived. The battery didn't, but the phone
Ooh.
itself survived and lasted me for many months after that. Um, Sometimes you luck out, sometimes you don't. But all those Game Boys, though, and I have a lot of Game Boys, um, those things are virtually indestructible. Like, you got to be doing something, like, very wrong to destroy a Game Boy.
There's a museum that has a Game Boy that got hit by one of the bombs that was dropped in the Iraq War, and
Yeah, the Desert Storm Game Boy.
yeah, it fused the Tetris cartridge to the Game Boy, but it still runs.
Hey, sometimes Tetris is all you need.
I, I, I can't play games that don't have like an end goal. Like anything that's just like get the highest score. I don't know why my brain just like within 2 minutes goes, I can't do this, and I don't know.
Yeah, like, I totally feel you on that. Tetris is like early Tetris is like one of those. I think like it's like an exception almost. It's kind of mindless, but also challenging. And like whenever I do pick it up and play it, it's really satisfying to get it to like level 15, level 16.
Surprisingly, Tetris is actually kind of interesting to watch. I don't even watch a lot of esports, but there's this like one clip where it was like two guys that were doing like a Tetris tournament, and one of them was like a world record holder, and I think he broke his record when he lost. And then so it was just this other guy that was down by like 3,000 points or something, and you just watch him slowly climb up before beating this guy's new record and then winning the tournament.
Wow.
It's a crazy moment to watch, even though it's just block stacking.
Yeah, well, for the first like 10 or so stages in Tetris, it is just block stacking, but once it gets really fast, it's like I don't even. How far can you get in Tetris?
I don't know. I haven't played since like I was in middle school. I always got like a couple stages in, and then like I said, I got bored because like if I don't have an end goal to me, like if I don't have a like even if it's just like hit wave 20 and you win, if it's just endless, my brain
Yeah.
just like clocks out and goes, I can't do this.
Well, like with some versions of Tetris, like I think it's the case with the Game Boy and the NES version. Um, the further you get, or the more points you get, you get like I mean they're kind of like endings where you get like a little scene of like a rocket taking off, or if you get real deep into it, you get a scene with like a bunch of Nintendo characters and a bigger rocket or something. Uh, so there's a goal there, but you can also find these pictures online.
I Tetris 99 looked interesting because you get to fuck over everyone. I
Never
don't know if
played
you.
it.
It's a battle royale.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So as you like stack and get points, you like throw out challenges to the other players. So the idea is that like you're trying to like obviously survive as people throw you things, but you're trying to like do things in a certain way to like screw up everyone else, and whoever is the last one standing wins.
So that kind of sounds like a bit like the two-player mode from Tetris and Dr. Mario for the SNES, where if you're playing Tetris with the other person and you knock out more than one line at the same time, then it's going to drop some extra pieces that fucks up what the other player is doing.
I think that's what it does. I haven't played Tetris 99, but it's funny that you mentioned Dr. Mario because I think I've played more Dr. Mario than I have Tetris because it came I think free on my 3DS or like was like a
Yeah.
built-in game on one of my other games.
If Dr. Mario is I like it. It wouldn't be my first choice.
So aside from Tetris and Dr. Mario, what have you been playing?
So lately, honestly, I haven't really been playing much of anything. I was working on a Tears of the Kingdom file, and then life happened, and I haven't had time to keep going. Before that, I was just playing random stuff, retro stuff, Game Boy games, a lot of Game Boy games, a little bit NES here and there, a little bit of Genesis. Um, it it's hard to find time to play anything anymore.
Yeah, I just started my. I've had jobs before, but I started my first full-time job this week. So I'm amazed at how little time I have, especially because I need a nap after my shift. So the whole day is pretty much gone.
Yeah, yeah, like when you only have so much time at the end of your day and the beginning of your day, it kind of changes how you value said time. Uh, but you see, like this is part of the reason why I tend to play older stuff is because I know that it's like a one sitting commitment and not like a 40 or 60 hour thing.
Sometimes I want that, but sometimes I want the 40-hour experience. Sometimes I want like this is my game for the next 2 months, you know?
Yeah, yeah, like
But
Tears of the Kingdom, people can beat it in like an hour and a half or something. But I kind of want to savor it. I just can't find the time to savor it.
that's what my girlfriend's been doing. She's always like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, you could just do the main story. And she's like, no, I want to savor it. I'm like, okay, gotta keep
Yeah,
wandering aimlessly, I guess.
yeah. Carve out that underworld, or do some side quests or something.
My pile of shame includes not Tears of the Kingdom, but the previous one, Breath of the Wild, because I beat one Divine Beast, and then I explored the rest of the map. I got all
Yeah,
the Divine Beast unlocked. I found everything I could, and then I was like, I'm satisfied, and I just didn't finish the game.
And like the ending is like one of the shortest parts.
I know it is, but like I found the exploration to be like the best. Like I only have like 5 hearts, and I only have like just a little bit of stamina, and I just refuse to
Yeah.
do any of the shrines because I'm terrible at puzzles. But I also thought that it was just really fun trying to traverse the world and do all the travels like really under equipped. I don't know. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, I like how bare those games are. I don't know if bare is the right word for it, but they kind of just like throw you in, and they throw you in with damn near nothing, and you kind of got to make the best of what you got around you.
Well, those are my favorite shrines. There's a few that if you go and try to do them, it's just they take away all your equipment and you have to reforge for stuff, and those were my favorite. I don't know. There's something about like the early stages of an RPG where you're like slowly equipping yourself from naked to like the basic and mid gear that I just think is always like the most fun.
Yeah, like Breath of the Wild has what is it, like Eventide Island or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I would say that that's a highlight for sure.
There's also one where it's an island that's just in pitch black. That is such a fun island to do. I don't remember if it takes away all your equipment, but that one was a blast.
Yeah, there's a lot to appreciate there, but finish it. Just kill that final boss and watch the credits roll.
I watched my girlfriend do it, so you know that counts.
It's so much better when you do it yourself.
Um, I have a problem with finishing games. I think I've done every route in Fallout New Vegas, and I just never finished them.
Yeah, like recently. Oh God, I guess it's not recently anymore, but some time ago, I got the Metroid Prime remaster, and I haven't even removed it from the cellophane.
Oh my
Um,
god!
but look, like I think yeah, it was last year. I played through the whole trilogy on the Wii, so it's still kind of it's still kind of fresh in my mind.
That makes
But
sense.
I started a Shenmue file last year, or not Shenmue, but Shenmue 3, and never finished it. Um, about 2 years ago, I got deep into Secret of Mana for the SNES, and like I don't even know where I am in that game anymore. If I play it again, I'm gonna have to start over.
That's the worst part about those games is always when you step back in and you're like, well, fuck.
Yeah, and it's especially bad with the older ones because like with some of the newer ones, you can kind of like look through your stuff and kind of figure it out. They might keep a log, but from game like with games in like the 80s and like the 90s, there is no such thing.
That's why I started playing Warden, and it's like imagine a CRPG, but it's only text. There's not even like combat or anything. And it's mostly about like map exploration and like dialogue. And I need to get back to it because if I don't, I'm not going to remember anything. So like I feel like there's a timer above my head to get back into Road Warden or I'm fucked. Same with I had bought Disco Elysium on sale and I'm just waiting to have the time to like blow through it.
Too many games, not enough time.
That's that's the real. I bought I bought all of the Portal games and Half Life games, and I still haven't played them because I got them for research purposes.
How are you going to research them if you're not playing them?
I know, I know. Instead, what I'm
Yeah, like
researching is laying in bed and playing Marvel Snap half the time.
oh shame. But yeah, for a while I was going to like retro gaming shops and like buying up all this stuff, and I also have a stack of stuff from like my childhood, and like now I have all these cartridges. I have like hundreds of cartridges, and I probably haven't even played half of them a single time. It's like shit. Really got to do something about that. Games are not meant to just sit on a shelf and be appreciated. They're meant to be played.
Yeah, that's the joys of an interactive medium.
Yep.
does make it harder to break into them though, because a movie you could just passively do. You can't really passively play a video game. Well, I guess you can if it's like Minecraft. You could just not give a shit and dig a hole.
Like one of my friends, he's always busy, always doing something. I don't see how this man has any free time, and yet he has done damn near total completion on Tears of the Kingdom. Like he takes his Switch places, like plays for like a couple of minutes here and there, and then doesn't play it for a few hours and does it again. It's like I don't understand how you can do that. Like I personally wouldn't enjoy playing a game piecemeal. Like if I want to play something, I want to sit down and play it.
I don't really understand completionists at all. I just really don't. They were like, it's 1,000 Kuroks. I'm like, so it's 1,000 things I'm not going to find. Great. Good to know. Like, I'm not even going to attempt to collect them all. But I think, have you ever collected all the Kuroks in any of the games?
No, and that's because it got spoiled for me before I actually played it. And what you get for it is, well, a pile of shit.
That's what I was gonna. I was exactly gonna say that, and I think the game is like actually trying to tell you like, don't do this. There's no point to it.
Yeah, like getting the seeds is good for increasing your inventory slots, but even that maxes out after a while.
Yeah, I think they put so many in just so that way like the player has the ability to choose how they want to go. Like same with the shrines, there's like combat shrines, exploration ones, puzzle ones, because depending on what type of player you are, you can choose what you want to do, which I think is like brilliant ways to do game design. Like my favorite shrines to do were the ones where you had to like it was a cast giving you a poem and then you had to find the shrine. Like those were always my favorite because I had to figure out how to get to it. Um, and the same thing for the Kuroks. You know, if you're bad at archery, don't do that Kurok. Or if it's just lifting a rock and you don't have the time for it, go do one that you think's more interesting. It wasn't designed to do all 100 or however many there are.
Yeah, like 1,000. I think what 1,000 Koroks, 100 and I think 120 shrines base game, something like that. But like, when I would see certain Korok puzzles, like I would see it, I would recognize it, and I would just say, "Fuck this," and just keep going.
Not today.
Yeah, not putting up with this shit.
Well, I think that's why everyone's been crucifying them.
Yeah, a little bit of payback.
That was.
Hey, they didn't ask to be that way. Okay, someone made them that way.
I want to play Tears of the Kingdom just for the building. It looks so much fun. Just I've been seeing people build mechs and cars and all kinds of shit.
Yeah, I personally never went that far with it. Like I struggled just to build a hovercraft. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience to put something like that together, like a Metal Gear.
I think there's a subreddit called like the Hyrule Engineers Club, and it's just people building like really wacky shit. Someone built an autonomous drone. Like they launched it with the battery pack, so it launches in the air and then just goes around and starts fucking drone striking with lasers and bombs at all the enemies.
Yeah, like I saw one guy. He managed to make something with that crafting system with legs that move independently, just about, where like one goes forward and the other one catches up, and then it like I don't know how I don't know how he did it.
Although I know I also would be pretty bad at it because I've played a few games. You get to build whatever. It's like put two sticks together. I'm like, I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, like the system in that you kind of have to like drag stuff around and then stick it to other things. And depending on where you're at in the game, it'll get logged, so you can you can build it again just by selecting it. But that first time you got to build it, depending on what it is, it can be a pain. But it's still fun though. But I wouldn't spend a few hours building Metal Gear Rex.
I did see someone just didn't want to do the shrine, so what they did was they froze like a block of water. and then they pulled it out, froze another block, and slowly glued them all together until he made this huge ass staircase, and then just placed it at the top, and then he climbed to the top and solved the shrine.
Yeah, like I've made like giant ramps, giant bridges, just to cheese my way through things.
I think it's cool that the devs are like, fuck it, that's how you want to play, go for it.
Well, yeah, like I think that was like one of their design philosophies was to let the player kind of do things their way. Like there are things that you have to do a certain way, but for the most part, you don't. It's a sandbox.
I do, man. It's so interesting to watch these devs like just because I didn't know what they could possibly add to like make like how do you make a sandbox deeper? I guess when it comes to exploration. And then they decided to just give you a whole new set of tools and completely redesign some of the shrines, and it feels like a completely different game. It's crazy how they're able to do it. I don't know how they would make a sequel from this point on.
Yeah, like even by reusing the same world, they managed to make it like they made it different enough. Um, like I don't feel like I'm playing the same game again when I play that.
Oh, the depths is so brilliant. They basically just took a bunch of negative space, which is like the undergrounds, and then turned it into a whole new area, while presenting a new traversal challenge being the endless dark. And they've created such an interesting zone.
Yeah, and if you're like, how do I put this? If you get sick of seeing the surface, then you can go underground and get some different visual stimulation. If you get sick of seeing that, then you can just go back up.
I love games that just let me ping pong because I have ADHD, so anything that lets me just ping pong between different concepts is a victory in my book.
Yeah, like I mean, big ass adventure games. Like sometimes I appreciate them, but they can become a drag sometimes.
What recent game has become a drag for you?
So a game that became a drag for me. It's not that recent. It's actually Death Stranding.
I got it for free from the Epic Store, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, I played through the whole thing. I didn't do total completion, but after a while, you're kind of just like, oh god, I'm delivering packages again.
That is the
And
game.
like it's visually, it's a beautiful game. Um, the story is interesting. It's a Kojima game, so of course the story is going to be kind of interesting. Um, everything feels solid. Everything feels right. But after doing the same thing for like 20 or 30 hours, you're just like, oh god, like when does it end?
I've always thought it was interesting how some games, like the whole idea of, the game is the core gameplay loop. How some games, it's almost like they're built to last only a certain time frame, and then from there it's just a matter of like you got to find that sweet spot when it comes to pacing. Like obviously, if Gun Spectre was 30 hours, that might be a problem.
Yeah. Oh, I'd say if Gun Spectre was meant to be a 30-hour game, it it wouldn't be out there right now.
I saw a lot of I don't know. Have you ever seen the YouTuber Skillup?
No.
He did a review of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and it's just his big thing was just like how long that game was, and to watch his review progressively go from like he's enjoying the game to like he fucking hates it by the end of the review because of how long the game dragged. I think there's an hour-long cutscene. I'm not sure.
That's a lot of cutscene.
It's either an hour or 30 minutes. Someone in the comments is gonna get mad and correct me. And then you beat the game, but then it goes, actually there's like 3 other zones to get the real ending, and you have to like grind for another like dozen hours or so to get the real ending. And nothing changes gameplay wise, and he just lost his shit. But I want to make a video essay on this concept just because I see a lot of people complain that video games are padded to be brain dead, right?
Yeah.
But when you come home from work, you kind of just want to play something brain dead because you're exhausted, right? So,
But oh, go ahead.
oh no, I'm about to ramble for even longer. So if you want to cut in real quick.
Oh no, I was gonna say, you know, it depends on what your personal definition of brain dead is, like as far as the game goes.
Well, I should say a lot of people complain about like you know how they have like the Ubisoft style open world, which is like a bunch of points in the map, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people like that because they come home from work and they just want something really simple to turn their brains off. And I think a lot of times I see people critique games media and they demand, you know, if you want to push, you know, video games as an art form, then you need to be playing more challenging games, more interesting games. But I feel like if you do that without fixing the underlying material problem, that is people come home and they're fucking exhausted, like it's not going to work. You're not going to get people challenged. Like no one wants to go and pay, you know, their limited budget for a game that's possibly short hours because they don't know when the next time they're going to play a game is, and something that they just may not like because it's different. They want something that's going to be long and that they can just tune their brain off at the end of the day. So I think unless we solve that problem, we're going to get a lot of games that have a lot of fluff in them just because that's what people inevitably want based on their lifestyle choices. So we need to change people's lifestyle before we see the games that we want to actually get the changes we need.
Well, gamers, consumers, whatever you want to call them, they can vote with their wallets. If a certain flavor of game doesn't appeal to them and enough of them don't buy it, then there's a chance, it could be a small chance, but a chance nonetheless, that it will change what kind of content comes along in the future. But so much of it's like personal taste, because like a brain dead game for me could just be like wandering around in one of those Zeldas for a few hours, or it could be burning through something like Gunstar Heroes in like 2 hours. It just depends on the mood. But gaming is like this huge, just a big tent thing now. And there's that old saying, like you can please some people some of the time, but you can't please everyone all the time. I thought I was going for something there, but I kind of lost it.
No, I get what you're trying to say. That one, a lot of people will critique, some games for being the same, like, oh, Far Cry hasn't really evolved, and then they'll turn around and go play a racing game, which, like, I love racing games, but let's face it, like, you're racing the whole game. Nothing's really changing.
Racing games, I don't think have changed much ever.
There has been. I saved it. There's one racing game that's like gonna be like a futuristic racing game set on the moon with like low gravity, which like I'm really excited for because it's like a complete new setting. Obviously, the cars are all gonna look different. It's gonna be really wild. And then there's another one that's like an RPG. We have like a lot of dialogue, but it's all set based on the racing. So they're finally getting like racing games have been trash stories for so long. Holy shit! Like I really enjoyed Need for Speed Heat, but that might have been like the most bland milquetoast story I've ever played through.
There's a Diddy Kong Racing if you're playing racing games for the plot.
Diddy Kong Racing gave me nightmares as a kid.
Was it WizPig?
Yes, like when he dies at the end. I don't know why that scene just got stuck in my head, and it gave me like a nightmare.
It's still fun. I mean, I never got any nightmares from it. I think what really disturbed me the most, this was when I was younger, like those damn silver coins.
Is that like something you're supposed to collect in Diddy Kong Racing?
Yeah, so if you go through like all the races once, you have to go through them again, but you have to collect these silver coins. I think they're silver. And still win the race. which can be a real pain in the nuts.
Yeah, I know Crash Bandicoot does stuff like that, where it's like you beat the level and it's like, okay, now go back and beat the level, but also get all of the collectibles, and it's like, no, don't do that to me.
Get all the boxes.
Or I love Yoshi's Islands, but one of the collectibles are red coins, and to collect them, it's blended into any of the gold coins. And if you've played Mario or any platformer like from Nintendo, you know that there's a lot of gold coins. So it might as well be collect them all because you're trying to figure out which ones are the red ones.
Mario, never heard of him. Sounds Italian. You know, I never tried going for like total completion in any Yoshi game that I play. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna like, here's the beginning, gonna get to the end.
I think
Mario. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I did it for Yoshi's Island only because like, as a kid, you know, you have a lot of time and you only have 7 games, so you gotta max out the time.
Like Mario 64, you know, getting like 100 coins in every stage to get that star, that could be irritating at times.
Yeah, those ones I never did. I tried to get all the other stars, but someone told me, yeah, you get 100 gold, you get a star. I'm like, I'm not doing that one. No, thank you.
And there are some spots where you get that 100th coin, but you're screwed. You can't get the star, and you can't go back, so you got to start over.
That just sounds rough.
Yeah, well, you know, it was the 90s.
I think in Mario Galaxy, if you collect every star and you get all the collectibles, you unlock the ability to play as Luigi, and then to get like 100% completion, you have to do it all over again, but with Luigi.
Well, hey, you know, Green Mario, why not?
He jumps a little higher, I think.
Yeah, I've never played Galaxy, but like historically, Luigi jumps higher and he's a little bit slippery.
I don't understand completionists. I really do not understand like a different breed of player for me when I hear people like the struggle that people go through.
Yeah, there are very few games that I ever tried going 100% on.
I think Dark Souls has New Game Plus up to like 13.
Wait, say again?
I think the original Dark Souls, it has New Game Plus up to like 13, so it's like 13 times you can do New Game Plus.
Ugh. I've never played it, but I couldn't picture myself just like playing the same game 13 times over for recreation.
And it just gets harder and harder.
Yeah, no thanks.
But you'll reach a point where you need like 13 million souls to level up, and you can't bank them. You just die, and you're like, oh, okay, goodbye to all of that work.
13 million souls at the expense of your own.
I like the Souls franchise. I've never done New Game Plus. It's just not... You beat the game, do it again. No, thank you. I'm done. I've completed this experience.
Like, I've never played any of them. Like, I know that they're popular, and, I mean, all the memes and everything, but got hundreds of other games that I gotta play before I go playing something else.
It's worth playing. It's not... I don't know. They're hard. They are very hard. I think I've only beaten them because I've gotten carried through them by my friends who are very clearly much better than me. But I can say, even though I was carried in Dark Souls 1, I did it with mouse and keyboard, motherfucker.
Oh wait, is it harder to play with mouse and keyboard?
It is dog shit on mouse and keyboard. It is dog shit. Because, like, some of the keys you can't, like, really rebind, so you gotta, like, fight with it in a really quirky way. It's infamously difficult to play with mouse and keyboard, especially on the first one.
God, how does that work when you have, like, different keyboard layout?
I don't know. The real tricky thing is, like, you're trying to, like, mess with the camera and lock on and moving all at the same time, and on mouse and keyboard it's just not good. It's just not great.
Ugh. Guess you better get a controller.
Yes, but the PC release for the original Dark Souls didn't accept all the controllers because funnily enough, I had the Logitech Bluetooth controller that was used in that submarine that sank. And it didn't work. It didn't work on Dark Souls, so I had to do mouse and keyboard.
Oh, wait, was it? Is that an X input device or is it direct input?
I'm not sure. It's been a while. All I know is when I
Yeah.
saw that fucking controller in that submarine, I was like, no.
Yeah, that explains it.
I saw that shit and I was like, it doesn't work. Why would you do it?
I'm not gonna say anything about that. Okay, it was a tragedy. It was a tragedy, and it's mean to laugh, but God, fuck around and find out.
The carbon fiber tube they used was expired. They got it on sale.
Stop.
Dude, I have so many details that I followed about that. It's expired.
All right, okay. I'm just gonna say it. Yes, it was definitely a tragic loss of life. But holy shit, what were they thinking?
I don't know. I don't know. On that note, I hope everyone's enjoyed the Paper Prototypes podcast.
Oh shit.
Chris, is there anything you want to shout out? Any, links, follows? Is there a local pizza place you want to shout out?
Okay, so links. Gun Spectre, get it on Steam, get it on itch.io. Check me out on Twitter, Chris Black RX. Also check out the artist who helped me with Gun Spectre. I think I would just know his stuff right off the top of my head. Great guy though. Bio Booster Pixel on Twitter. Very talented, very knowledgeable. Also, shout out to my publisher, Click Team. They can be found at Click Team. And of course, shout out to you. Thanks for having me on. This has been interesting. I haven't done anything like this in a long time.
No problem. It's always great to have guests on. All right, everybody. I'll see you all on the next episode of the Paper Prototypes podcast. Goodbye.
Farewell.